Hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in or clicking on or however you arrived upon this channel and this show. For those of you who don't know, tomorrow, September 5th, 2017, marks the 25th anniversary of Batman the Animated Series. In my opinion, one of the greatest animated shows or cartoons of all times, and I have to say probably in my top 10 television series of all times. And I think that that holds true for a lot of people. This was a huge deal. This was something like we had never seen before, was an action animated series. The show was produced by Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski, and it served as kind of the starting point of all of the Warner Brothers DC animated shows. They went on from Batman to Superman to the Justice League to Justice League Unlimited, and now just a whole plethora of movies that they're still making today. I think the most recent one was the Batman and Harley Quinns, and it all started with Batman the Animated Series. But for me, the show was a huge influence on my life. I think that I fell into the perfect demographic of this show. I was about 10 years old at the time. And for those of you that want to do the math, you can figure out how old I am now. And I really feel like the show was created for kids in my age group. It was just about the time that I was getting ready to go into middle school and some of the older grades and expected to grow up a little bit and put away some of the childish things like cartoons and toys and games and things like that and move into more middle school-y kind of things like, I don't know, sports, girls, food, cars in a couple of years, model kits, remote control planes, maybe. And for me, who grew up loving cartoons and loving Saturday morning cartoons and after school cartoons, this show came along at the perfect time when it was a cartoon or animated series, if you wish, but it was cool and it was dark and it was a little violent and it told grittier stories and it wasn't just slapstick humor and it wasn't just silliness and noise and music. It was a gritty show for an animated series, and they really pushed the boundaries of that. There was punching and it was a bit of a throwback to some of the cartoons from the 80s that they've gotten away from, like G.I. Joe and Transformers, and for me it was Centurions and Mask, if you remember those shows. And even in those, it was laser guns that they used, and you never saw any of the bad guys get hurt. They'd always jump out of the plane before it exploded. Here comes a show where they're using real machine guns, and there's a couple episodes where there's actually blood, and Batman gets a little beat up, and I fell right into it. And it was because of this show that I became such a huge Batman fan, that sparked all of this that's behind me, and there's more behind the camera as well. And not just that, but even the way that this show was done, that I didn't realize until I was older and watching back on this show, that it was the film noir and the 1940s and the art deco and these mysteries and detectives and all those other elements, those peripheral elements that are included in the show that also influence this interest, this lifelong interest and obsession of mine of all of those things. And this all started from a single pilot episode. Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski, who were both working for Warner Brothers Animation on Tiny Toons, and they were wanting to do something with Batman, and they created this 2-minute pilot episode. Later on, elements of that became the opening sequence. The show was heavily influenced by the Max Fletcher Superman cartoons from the early 40s. And if you look at those side by side, they definitely have a very similar animation style, and it has that vintage kind of grainy look to it. And I know that Bruce and Eric, that's right, we're on first name basis, really strive to make the show look older and look like it was made in the 40s. And they were also really influenced by the Tim Burton Batman movies that were coming out, that had come out at that point. And I think that what Tim Burton did for the movies and for the live action Batman was to pull it out of what a lot of people thought of Batman, which was the 1960s, very comical, very goofy and silly and kind of tongue-in-cheek sort of show, which, by the way, I also adore that show, but for very different reasons. And he brought it into more of a real life, kind of darker, moodier feel to it. So there was a lot of that influence that went into the show. And again, you can see that just in the animation style. It was a very darkly animated show, which was, again, very different for anything we've ever seen. Even G.I. Joe, a lot of the battles took place during the day, you know? So it wasn't even dark out. This show, most of the episodes take place at night. And even when it's during the day, it's sort of cloudy and overcast. One of the ways that they achieved that dark look was they did something that had never been done in animation, because here you've got Bruce and Eric, who've never produced a show before, but they were entrusted with it because of their sample. And they came up with the idea of painting the backgrounds on black paper just to give it an undertone of black and make it come across even darker. That had just never been done, and they were too naive to know why they shouldn't be doing that. So all those elements come together, and it just creates this perfect, almost flawless show. Now, granted, I look back on the show now with a lot of nostalgia and a lot of warm feelings of coming home from school and getting my after-school snack and sitting down and watching the cartoon. But I watch it now, and I think the show still holds up. And so to that, I have a special announcement that I'm going to be launching a new series here on this channel as a tribute to Batman the Animated Series. And I'm going to go back and watch each and every episode of the first season of Batman the Animated Series on the 25th anniversary of each and every episode of the first season. And I'm going to take a tour through each of those episodes, talk a little bit about it, and then I'm going to rank each of those episodes as just my personal favorite episodes as each one comes out, and compile a list and give you some highlights of the episodes, things that I enjoyed about the episodes, things I remember, and a little bit behind the scenes and background information about the episodes and the stories and those elements. So if that sounds interesting to you, join me on this journey. Click subscribe so you're notified when all the new episodes come out, and give a like to this video so I kind of have an idea of how many people are looking forward to this new series as we take a look at episode by episode of Batman the Animated Series. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you tomorrow as we look at the premiere episode, The Cat and the Claw. Thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. I'm Andy Knode.